Good evening and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission meeting. This meeting is called to order. City of Helena City Commission meeting, September 7, 2021, 6 p.m. Welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission Commission meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome public commentary, and please read the following tips and guidelines for app usage and your participation. Please, Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
City Attorney Joden.
Here.
City Manager Harlow Schulk.
Here.
Commissioner Holliday. Mr. Mayor, if I recall, Commissioner Holliday did indicate that he may be a bit late due to the Board of Adjustment meeting, for the record. Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Commissioner O'Loughlin. Here. Mayor Collins.
Here. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Madam Clerk. Pledge allegiance to the flag, the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Minutes. Our regular commission minutes from May 17th, 2021, June 28th, 2021, July 12th, 2021, August 9th, 2021 were received. Do we have any comments or questions or anything? If not, the minutes will be received as submitted. Proclamation, Suicide Prevention Month. Do we have a representative of Volunteers of America present? Okay, I'll read the proclamation and we will turn to the representative afterwards. City of Helena proclamation. Whereas Suicide Prevention Month brings together individuals and organizations around the country and the world to raise awareness that suicide can be prevented. Treatment is effective and people do recover. And whereas every person in every community has a responsibility to identify the warning signs, start an honest conversation about suicide with someone who is in crisis, and become familiar with resources to offer a person who is in need. And whereas in these challenging times, messages of hope and healing are needed more than ever. And preventing suicide requires the efforts of all community members, from individual friends, families, neighbors, co-workers, to government agencies and community organizations from a wide range of sectors. And whereas suicide is a public health issue that directly impacts our community and requires connection and support to reduce suicide risks. And whereas the City of Helena recognizes that resiliency, strong relationship, access to clinical care, and healthy behaviors help protect people against suicide. And whereas the City of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, and other local organizations are committed to a comprehensive suicide prevention approach that encompasses strategies for community education, prevention, early intervention, treatment, postvention after a death has occurred. Whereas September is recognized across the United States as Suicide Prevention Month, and provides the opportunity to do more by being the one to ask, being the one to keep them safe, being the one to be there, being the one to help them stay connected, and being the one to follow up. Now, therefore, I, Wilma J. Collins, Mayor of the City of Helena, Montana, do hereby proclaim September 2021 as Suicide Prevention Month, Hope, Resilience, and Recovery throughout the City of Helena, Montana. In witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Helena, Montana to be affixed this 7th day of September 2021. Wilmot Collins, Mayor, attests. Clerk of the Commission, Danae Claiborne. Do we have a representative of the Volunteers of America present? Danielle Galeski. Madam Clerk?
If a representative from Volunteers of America could raise their hand to confirm they're in the attendees, I would appreciate it.
Do we have any?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any hands raised. Without a full name, I can't confirm.
Okay, we'll continue. Board appointments. 8. Airport Authority Commission Board of Adjustment, Business Improvement District, Heritage Preservation, Tourism Board, Non-Motorized Travel Advisory. I'm recommending the following board appointments. Airport Authority Commission, reappoint Tom McGree to a second term on the Helena Airport Authority Commission. Term will begin upon appointment and expires on September 1, 2024. Business Improvement District, appointment of Seth Brandenberger to an interim appointment to the BID. Term will begin upon appointment and expires on October 31st, 2022. City County Heritage Preservation and Tourism Board, reappointment of Tom Connell to a second term on the City County Heritage Preservation and Tourism Board as a joint member. Term will begin upon appointment and expires on June 30th, 2024. Non-Motorized Driver Advisory Council, appointment of Kevin Reckhoff to a first term on the Non-Motorized Driver Advisory Council. Term will begin upon appointment and expires on March 31st, 2021. Do you have any comments, questions from the commission? Okay. And for public comments, I just have a statement I would like to read. To the members of the public participating tonight, I'd like to address the use of the public comment period. You may ask questions during the public comment period. However, the intent of the public comment period is to provide comment on a specific item and not engage in back and forth. A commission member may take up your question and direct it to the city manager on the public's behalf. This is at the discretion of the commission. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. Do we have any public comments on this, on the board appointments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one hand raised. However, if this did pop up right as we were moving on from the suicide prevention from Linda Kinsey, so it may be related to that previous item, but I will allow Ms. Kinsey to speak.
Go ahead, Ms. Kinsey, if you have comments related to the board appointments.
My comments are in relation to the suicide prevention proclamation.
Okay. We'll come back to that after the board appointments.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any comments? Commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would move the approval of the following board appointments. Airport Authority Commission, reappointment of Tom McGree to a second term on the Helena Airport Authority Commission. Term will begin upon appointment and expire on September 1st, 2024. Business Improvement District, an appointment of Seth Brandenberger to an interim appointment of the BID. Term will begin upon appointment and expire on October 31st, 2022. The City County Heritage Preservation and Tourism Board, the reappointment of Tom O'Connell to a second term on the City County Heritage Preservation and Tourism Board as its joint member. Term will begin upon appointment and expire on June 30, 2024. The Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council, the appointment of Kevin Reckhoff to a first term on the Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council. Term will begin upon appointment and expire on March 31, 2024.
Second.
So move and seconded. Do we have any discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk? Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, apologize. Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin. Aye. Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Consent agenda, A, claims. Madam Manager?
Good evening, Mayor. I recommend you entertain a motion on consent to approve claims for August 4th, 6th, and 13th of 2021 for a total of $1,638,847.37.
Any discussion from the commission?
Mayor, do you want us to take these items together? If so, it would be maybe helpful to get an explanation of the second item as well.
Okay. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 6B is the West Side Major Phased Subdivision applicant's request for a 30-workday extension to the subdivision review period. The request is that the city move any decision deadlines from October 13th, 2021 to November 29th, 2021. This conforms with state and state statute MCA 76-3-608, which requires that a governing body evaluate the impacts of a subdivision proposal. The applicant's preliminary engineering report used a coefficient other than that which is required by the city's engineering standards. And as a result, the applicant has agreed to resubmit with the correct coefficient, which results in a better understanding of the impacts of the subdivision into the wastewater system. This is just an extension to ensure that the details of that impact onto the the wastewater system is appropriately evaluated when the item comes before the commission. So, Mayor, I recommend you entertain a motion on consent to approve the applicant for the West Side Major Phase Subdivision request of a 30-day work extension from October 13th to 2021 to November 29th, 2021.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission? Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no public comment specific to the consent agenda. I do, however, have Ms. Kinsey
Yes.
still available. Would you like me to give? Ms.
Madam,
Kinsey the floor?
yes, would you please I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will move item A, claims, and item B, West Side Major Phase Subdivision applicant's request for a 30 working day extension to the subdivision review period, thus moving the city's decision deadline from October 13th, 2021 to November 29th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk, would you take the roll?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Is there a second one there? No, okay.
Yeah, both of them.
Yes. Ms. Kinsey, you have the floor to say a few words on September being our Suicide Prevention Month.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm here on behalf of the Lewis and Clark County Suicide Prevention Coalition, as well as the Helena Indian Alliance. We have a week, and I'd like to thank you for your proclamation in support of Suicide Prevention Month in September. I don't know if they sent you the calendar, but the coalition has prepared a calendar of events throughout the month here in Helena and the local areas in support of suicide prevention activities. And I just am here to thank you and hope that individuals and yourselves may be able to participate in some of those suicide prevention activities. I don't have the specific calendar in front of me, but it's posted pretty much all over town and also at Lewis and Clark County. So again, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, in support of suicide prevention. Here at Helena Indian Alliance, we do have a 5-year suicide prevention grant in which we offer suicide prevention activities throughout the community. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. And you can pick up the proclamation from the City Commission office. And if you do have the activities, the agenda activities for the month of September, you can drop them off also at the office for us to take a look at them and participate as we see.
Thank you so much. We'll do that tomorrow.
You bet.
Okay.
Communications proposals from the commission.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
a couple, if I may, I'll try to be brief. The first being, I'd like to say thanks, I guess, to a number of people, but we'll start with the Helena Fire Department for their response last night or this morning at 2 a.m. For what we in the business call a good stop. There was a fire reported at 24 South Ewing, which we know better as maybe as the Tower Hill Apartments. And upon their arrival, or as they were headed to the scene, there was a great volume of fire blowing out the east side, is my understanding. I got a really good and thorough report from Assistant Chief Mike Chambers, and he said as they pulled up, because they had the staffing available on their first in unit, they were able to establish a water supply and get water on the fire very quickly and really stop what could have been a much worse incident. And so I'd like to say thanks to a number of people. First of all, to Shift 3, led by my old compatriots, Bob Harvey, Battalion Chief Bob Harvey and Captain Scott Bachman for their leadership of the incident. And the rest of the crew for their initial response, but also to the many responding agencies that helped in the effort, notably the Helena Police Department, Baxendale Fire Department, West Valley, East Valley, Montana City, and the VA fire departments in assisting our fire department in that. And also to the Red Cross. A lot of people don't know that during incidents like these, people are displaced and in need of shelter in short order. And sounds like the Red Cross took care of about 40 people last night. And according to Assistant Chief Chambers, it sounds like about half of them are going to be able to return tonight. But so thanks to those folks. And I guess I'd also like to say thanks to the Helena public. I think it's important to note on an incident like this that their support of the 2018 levy enabled the first arriving units to have enough manpower to establish their own water supply and get water on it very quickly, as opposed to waiting for the units from Station 2 to arrive. So a lot of things came to play last night that resulted in an effective outcome with no human injury that was reported. It sounded like there were the loss of a couple of cats, which is unfortunate. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Secondly, if I guess I'd want to express some concerns that I'd heard from folks, I think in early August, users of the Bill Roberts golf course. And I think they voiced those not only to me, but to the whole commission. And so I was hoping that a way for me as an individual commissioner to better stay in touch with the golf courses is to attend their golf advisory board. And I just wanted to make sure that that there were no concerns or objections on the part of the commission. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's no objection from me, and that's for sure. I mean, I think it should be open to the public anyway. Any other comments or communications proposals from the commission?
Yeah, Mayor, just maybe one item for me.
Go ahead.
I guess I just wanted to see if we wanted to queue up a conversation about the extent to which we want to formally move commission meetings back to remote. We are all sitting remote today. So I wasn't sure if that was on the city manager's agenda tonight to have that conversation, or if that should be queued up another way. But I don't know who's currently sitting in the commission chambers, but just for purposes of disclosure and transparency, I just wonder if we want to move it back so that everybody's sort of on the same, wavelength as far as how we're communicating.
Thank you. And I would want to, thanks for that, Commissioner. Madam Manager, and, for me, I want to hear from the county health where they're at with us moving back into the chamber or not. So if you can get some information from them about our participation in the chamber, I'll appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. I absolutely will. And Commissioner Laughlin, I don't know that it's necessary for formal decision-making in order for you all to decide that you would like to stay and completely move to remote. We've left the room open so that individuals from the public who would like to come in could do so. But certainly we can talk more around and send you information from the health department that outlines some protective measures if you would like to go hybrid, and I'll provide those options to you. Thank you, Mayor.
And quite frankly, I don't mind going hybrid, but it's left with the rest of the commission. Any other comments or so? In fact, we can discuss that right now if you so please. What is your will and pleasure, Commissioner Dane?
I would be interested in hearing what county health has to say. I know that they have been making their decisions on their data, their decision-making dashboard, the matrix, that correlates to, transmission rates and everything else. Obviously things are higher now than they have been in a long time. So I would be anxious to hear their their thoughts and if they have any, is there a rate where we really should say, no, not in person anymore? Or do they feel like hybrid is sufficient with some people in and some people, fewer staff? That we have had fewer staff in the chambers too, even we are, but I would be anxious to hear if Drenda has any thoughts on it as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Logan?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually, as we read each day in the paper about the increased instances of COVID-19 and the transmissibility of the Delta variant and all of those numbers, I think I'm certainly okay with conducting these by Zoom.
Thank you. Commissioner Halliday?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would support going back to Zoom if that's where we're going to predominantly be, and making that clear for people just so that they understand the cleanest, easiest mechanism we're going to do. But also, Lewis and Clark County, I think, was the second highest in the state for reporting cases over the holiday weekend. Right. So we also have to think about not just whether we're going to leave it hybrid, but whether we're going to be inviting people into a less safe circumstance to observe our meetings when we've got this easy, much safer opportunity for meetings. So I'd be comfortable with going back to full Zoom.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Loughlin?
Yeah, I guess I would echo what Commissioner Logan shared and would be comfortable moving back to remote given where we sit. But if there's a desire to hear from public health, I'm comfortable with that as well.
Thank you. All right. Report of the city attorney. Attorney Jordan?
Mayor Collins, commissioners, nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Report of the city manager, Manager Hollishaw.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you, Mayor. A couple of announcements. First, I would like to recommend that you entertain a motion from the Commission to table item 11A. The need for the emergency ordinance no longer exists, and we would like to bring it back through the appropriate process for an ordinance passing. The emergency ordinance was based on timing with a potential franchise, and we no longer have that urgency, and would recommend the Commission and Mayor, you entertain a motion to table that item. Also, want to make sure and say thank you very much to our team as well. I appreciate Commissioner Logan's update to you all, and look forward to and appreciate the broader conversation about fire response and the work of our team to analyze what that looks like for Helena citywide, and especially when it becomes a part of these structures that are more than one floor and higher occupancy. So I really appreciate not only the team who were responding to the fire and our partners in the Red Cross, but also the work that was done in advance. And that was from all of the team in our history who had done the inspections and verified that the building met the fire code at the time. I had an opportunity today to walk the fire itself with the fire chief and the team, and appreciated the 2-hour firewalls that are required by city code. That really does make a huge difference. And all of the fire code expectations do play out in these fires. And I appreciate the adoption of the international code, but also the effort that goes into and the time spent in creating those codes across the country. There weren't elevators in this building, so it's an important fact, and we were very lucky that no one was harmed. So I'm in agreement with Commissioner Logan that I'm very thankful to see that there was no one harmed either in our team or in the community. So that is good news. This is in the last 3 months and since the beginning of the summer. This is the third multi-level high occupancy or greater occupancy fire we've had in the community. This one had no sprinklers within it. I shared the elevator. One of the questions that I asked the commissioner, not the commissioner, the fire chief today was, what would be the reason why, if we had sprinklers and a fire hydrant, why would we need to send out a fire truck in addition? I think there's always a question around that additional need for a fire response. And I think today was a very good example in that an elderly person and a rescue is part of that fire response team. An elderly person could not have taken an elevator. Also, systems fail, and ultimately that we are in an earthquake zone, and there is potential for fire beyond just what we have in such a situation, which includes gas and gas explosions. So we need to have the truck to bring people out to help in that rescue, but it also provides that secondary potential support needed should there be an additional release come as a result of the emergency. So I just wanted to underscore the importance of the work we do every day here in inspections and working with our development community and working with our building inspections program as it continues. And so thank you, fire marshals, as well, for all of your work. Last, I wanted to make sure and share to you that I sent out last week the expectation to our team for operations that when we're in the state of substantial or high transmission rate, that we implement more protection measures for our team members. And in particular, I wanted to make sure you are aware that anytime we're having events with people of 50 people or more, that those are no longer permitted. We are keeping our higher occupancy gatherings down and intentionally within our staff to reduce our potential for spreading COVID among our team. As well, there was conversation about the public gatherings and what's happening in our civic center. In departments, they can implement any further restrictions or expectations they have around the team, and the staff in the civic center are working with any events into the future that may have expectations. So Attorney Joden is a part of those conversations, and appreciate that the team is not only looking at what they can do to reduce the transmission among our teammates, but also for those who visit our facilities. As far as the public meeting itself, tonight's meeting, I'll share to you, I requested that the staff participate virtually so that we could ensure reduced occupancy in the chambers, since it was published as an open meeting in the chambers. And want to make sure that you know, whenever we move to hybrid meetings or even in person, I will always underscore the need for space in the chambers for our team members. If there is not a need to be there, they do not need to be there. And I appreciate that we're continuing to be in Zoom as well. If you have any other questions of me around the expectations of team members, I do believe you receive a copy of my notices when I send them out. Around mask wearing, you will see us have asked that all team members wear masks within the facility, again, to reduce when they're in public areas or around the public, and they cannot socially distance. Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any other items for sharing this evening.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Do we have any comments or questions for the manager? Then I'll move on to, I'll entertain a motion to table regular items A.
Mayor, I will move to table regular item 11A.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. 11 Bravo. Consider first passage of an ordinance amending Title 5, Chapter 7 of the Helena City Code by changing certain definitions found in 5-7-11, setting a public hearing date for September 20, 2021. Manager Hollishock.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is brought forward by our city attorney team, and it is specific to noise ordinance revisions that have been delayed and needed to be brought forward. The city attorney's office is working through a variety of cleanup within our city code, and would offer input from Assistant City Attorney Eric Coate, who is here to provide additional input.
You have the
Thank
floor,
you,
sir.
Manager. Thank you, Manager, Mayor and Commission. Title 5, Chapter 7 of the Helena City Code is the city's noise ordinance. The ordinance regulates the noise levels that are allowed in certain areas of town. And the way it does that is by dividing the city into 3 noise districts: a residential district, a commercial district, and an industrial district, with the industrial district allowing the most noise and the residential districts allowing the least amount of noise. And of course, the commercial then falls in between. The problem is the way the ordinance is currently worded. Certain residential and commercial districts in the city of, residential and commercial zones within the city of Helena fall into the industrial noise district. And the problem with that, of course, is that there's going to be more noise allowed in those residential and commercial zones than probably should be. Specifically, residential zones R4, residential urban, open space residential are considered industrial, and commercial zones, downtown, transitional residential, and public lands and institutions are currently considered industrial. What this ordinance will do is it will correct those problems. It will place those residential zones, R4, residential urban, and open space residential, into the residential noise district, and it will place commercial zones, downtown, transitional residential, public lands and institutions into the commercial noise district. So that's the purpose of this ordinance, and we ask that you consider first passage of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I have just a couple questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess, is there any real appreciable difference, I guess, for what we're currently experiencing in a lot of the areas right now? I'm thinking, for example, like concerts on the Walking Mall. Does this impact what folks currently are experiencing right now?
I'll direct questions to Assistant City Attorney Eric Coate. I don't believe so, but I do believe it's more along the lines of cleaning up some of that ordinance, so we're in alignment across, but I'll defer to Mr. Coate.
The manager is correct. We have not received specific complaints regarding this issue, the current issue with the ordinance. This was noticed by a citizen who brought it to our attention when they were trying to understand our noise ordinances. And then also with concerts, usually those are permitted anyway, and so they are allowed to deviate from what's found in the ordinance.
Great. Mr. Mayor, if I could have a follow-up.
Please.
So I'm thinking of an email that we got from a resident a little while ago about concerts at Lewis and Clark, and which maybe is what you're referring to, I'm not sure. So if they are, I guess, how does this impact something like that?
Thank you. Sorry about that, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner and Mayor. The ordinance is around, I believe, noise levels, not the impact of that noise near the homes and or the time of day in which those concerts are occurring. But I'll refer again more directly to City Attorney or Assistant City Attorney Coate.
You have the floor, Mr. Coates.
So usually when we provide a permit for concerts, there are certain parameters within which the permittee is required to operate. The noise level will have to stop at a certain time, for example. I think also the problem with the Lewis and Clark concert is not necessarily that the amount of noise was forbidden in that district, that noise district. I think that's more of a noise pollution issue where the noise may have been permitted in that specific district, but it was bleeding over into a residential area.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments from the commission? Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no written public comment or hands raised online, and I have
Thank you.
no one here in the chambers.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would move to approve first passage of an ordinance amending Title V, Chapter 7 of the Helena City Code by changing certain definitions found in 5-7-11 and setting a public hearing date for September 20, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. 11 Charlie, consider a resolution annexing an 11.4 acre parcel. Madam Manager, would you? Yes, thank you. No. I don't know what's going on with your end there, but you have this noise. 11 Charlie, consider a resolution annexing an 11.42 acre parcel from the tract legally described as tract A1, 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 A1A, as shown on certificate of survey number 3368415, generally located north of Jeanette Rankin Drive and east of South Alice Street in Lewis and Clark County, Montana, into the city of Helena. Madam Hollishaw?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure. I apologize for any background noise you may be hearing. So thank you for the flag that my microphone might be impacting in between. This item and the following item are all within the same 11.42 acre portion and are reflective of the Craftsman Village major subdivision. I know I can see Director Haugen is on from Community Development if she would like to provide an update on both this item and this, and if you will entertain the item that's following, item D as well, so that you understand the interconnection of the two as you entertain both, if you're interested, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Director Haugen, would you do Charlie and Delta, please?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, with your permission, I would like to turn this over to Mike McConnell. He's the staff person who's been handling this case, if that's okay with the mayor.
Sure.
And commission. Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. My name is Michael McConnell. I'm the staff planner for this case. So this is in regards to the annexation of the Craftsman Village Phase 6 major subdivision in Mountain Meadows. So this is a fairly rough aerial photo of the subject property to be annexed and final platted. You can see it's just north of Mountain View Park in Mountain Meadows. So the applicant is requesting final annexation into the City of Helena for Craftsman Village Phase 6. Both preliminary plat approval and the resolution of intention to annex were approved on May 7th, 2012. It is an 11.42 acre site with 4 new street right-of-ways being created as a result. It is currently vacant, but it is pre-zoned via ordinance 3109 to R4, which is a multifamily residential zone. Though this will be primarily single-family subdivision. Adjacent land uses are mainly vacant. On the south side, there is another phase of Crescent Village that has already been final platted. Crescent Village. So these are the conditions of approval for the annexation. Each phase of the Crossroads Amendment needs to have city services and be adjacent to city limits. That condition is met. It is adjacent to Crescent Village Phase 4. And the interim acceptance has been received on June 17th, and the financial guarantee for the remainder of the infrastructure was approved on August 19th. So each phase must provide a legal description for it that has been provided as part of the final plat application. The fire station lot is not necessarily included in this phase, but due to how phase subdivisions were handled at the time of preliminary plat approval, it must be accounted for here. So the resolution 2340 basically punted the fire station lot responsibility to when that specific area of Mountain View Meadows is developed. So it is not included in this phase. The review of new construction, these properties will be subject to building, fire, and zoning codes upon annexation and final plat approval. The taxes and assessments must be paid, and proof of that was submitted with the application, still current. The notice of special districts, the property owner is waiving the right to notification of protest and consent to the alteration of the urban forest maintenance district and the landfill monitoring district. And those are both signed, notarized, and included in your packet. And lastly, the final plat conditions must be met, and they are. We'll get to those here in a moment. So the motion for this one is to approve a resolution annexing the Crescent Village Phase 6 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in Lewis and Clark County into the city of Helena, Montana. Are there any questions about the annexation before we go on, or does this need to be voted on individually?
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. You know, it was difficult to hear you, and clearly, I don't know what's going on with your microphone, but I'm sure I was not the only person trying to pay keen attention to what you're trying to say. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission? Do we have any public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I do have one hand raised in the online meeting. Greg Worth.
Go ahead, Mr. Worth.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Greg Worth, WIRTH, with Staley Engineering at 3530 Centennial Drive. I'd like to thank Michael McConnell, the Planning Department, City Attorney, and the Engineering Office. I'll also provide some additional commentary on the next agenda item, the final plat, but this is for the resolution of intent to annex. We've met all 8 conditions, and by meeting all conditions, we request approval of annexation and moving on to the next agenda item, which will be the final plat of this property that's being annexed. So I'm also available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have a question just because I'm curious. So I know, Mountain View Meadows comes up pretty frequently, and I think it's almost 900 lots that were in that original 2012 approval. But I'm just curious how many of those lots have been developed so far and how many are left?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm not certain how many have been developed. There's been quite a bit of movement over the course of the 10 years that it's been active. But a good portion of that has since been, it's no longer active. It has expired, I suppose, is the best way to put it. So I would maybe ask Greg Worth if he has that figure handy.
Mr. Worth? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Worth.
I
Or
don't
Mr.
have the exact number. I would speculate that out of the total 900 lots, say a quarter to a third may have been developed, would be my best guess at this point.
I see we also have Mr. Runkle on. If he wants to add anything, you have the floor, sir. Madam Clerk, would you raise him up?
Okay, can you hear me? I'm unmuted.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. There are roughly 400 lots, I would say, that have been developed to now, probably around a little bit less than that, but maybe 325 or so sold and lived in residences. The 900 would not necessarily include the entire development, as Michael had said, but in addition to that, we made the lots narrower and more lots than we would have expected in order to make sure that there were reductions as we went and that the infrastructure, the sewer and water infrastructure, were definitely robust enough to complete the development. So I wish I had time to research that, but I would say it may be almost half of the ones that we're going to develop from that preliminary plat.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Runkle, would you turn your mic off, please? Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the commission? Any further public comments? Madam Clerk, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve a resolution annexing the Craftsman Village Phase 6 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in Lewis and Clark County into the city of Helena, Montana.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we'll go down to Delta. Consider approval of the final plat for the Craftsman Village major subdivision creating 41 lots and streets right away from approximately 11.42 acres and to accept the dedication to the city of the property and public improvements to designated hereon for property legally described as an approximately 11.42 acres portion of A1, 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 as shown on certificate of survey number 3368415 in the record of the clerk and recorder of Lewis and Clark County. Madam Hollishock.
Thank you, Mayor. This item ties to the previous item 11C, and it is the plat for this same area and includes the dedication of right-of-ways as well as the an exception of property being dedicated to the city. I'll turn it over also to Director Haugen and Planner Mike McConnell.
You have the floor, Director.
Mr. Mayor, I again would request that you allow Michael McConnell to give this presentation.
Go ahead, Mr. McConnell.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. As Ms. Harlow-Schock said, this is for the final plat for the Craftsman Village Phase 6 major subdivision. So again, this is the same rough vicinity map bordering Jeanette Rankin Drive and South Alice Street. The applicant is requesting final plat approval for the Craftsman Village Phase 6 of the Crossroads Amendment at Mountain View Meadows. This will create 41 new lots. 39 of them will be buildable. The remainder, the 2 will be open space, I believe, for a sign and for mailboxes. This will create 4 new street rights of way, and currently it is vacant. I won't go through the rest of it. We already just did that. So these are the preliminary plat conditions of approval from the findings of fact, May 7th, 2021. Not all of them apply to this specific phase, so I've highlighted the ones that do in gray. So condition number 1, each phase must provide adequate infrastructure, and the phases must be sequenced so that phases.
Mr.
So the
McConnell,
phases
can you
are-
go closer to your microphone? You're muffled. You're muffled.
Apologies, is this better, Mr. Mayor?
I think so.
Okay. So each phase must provide adequate infrastructure, including water and sewer and access. The phases must be sequenced so that they are adjacent to a previously final platted phase. This condition is met. It is adjacent to Craftsman Village Phase 4, and the interim acceptance was received June 17th and financially guaranteed on August 19th. Condition number 2, the intersection of Highway 282 and Runkle Parkway must be improved, and that has since been approved with City Project 06-43. Each phase of the Crossroads Amendment must demonstrate adequate transportation network and that it maintains a level of service in compliance with city standards. That condition has been met via the preliminary plat transportation impact statement. Skip number 4, that does not pertain to this particular phase. Number 5, vehicular access restrictions must be shown on the final plat for Alice Street and Runkle Parkway, and those are noted on the final plat. Number 6, the proposed street names would need to be accepted, and they have been. Condition number 7, the street ID signs must be installed prior to final plat approval, and they have been installed. Number 8, the bike ped paths must be located in a 20-foot right-of-way and be installed or financially guaranteed. This one has been met, but via a different method than was originally intended. The applicant has replaced a north-south bike ped path with a street, providing more connectivity than a bicycle or pedestrian path would have. So staff deemed that to be a non-material change. 9 and 10 have been previously taken care of with another phase. Number 11, all city-owned and maintained infrastructure must be located in a right-of-way or a 20-foot wide access and maintenance easement, and they have been. The easement documents should be in your packet as well. The water and sewer mains must be extended to facilitate future connections, and they have been extended to this property. The infrastructure plans must be submitted to the Public Works Department. They have acceptance June 17th, financial guarantee August 19th. None of these are applicable to this phase. They have to do with stormwater and parks, which have been taken care of with a previous phase. Jumping Crane Open Space and Warrigal Street are not part of this phase either. And then the wetlands and the drainages in blocks 6, 7, and 9 are also not part of this phase. So the motion for this particular item is move to approve the final plat for the Craftsman Village Phase 6 major subdivision, creating 41 lots and street right-of-way from approximately 11.42 acres, and to accept the dedication to the city of the property and public improvements so designated thereon for property legally described as an approximately 11.42 acre portion of tract A1, 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 A1A, as shown on COS number 336 8415 in the records of the clerk and recorder, Lewis and Clark County, Montana. If there are
Thank you,
any questions for me, I'd be happy to address those now.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Any comments or questions from the commission? Do you have any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I have one hand raised online. That would be of Greg Worth.
You have the floor, Mr. Worth.
Good evening again, Mayor and Commissioners. Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Michael McConnell and the city's attorney's engineering office for facilitating the final platting and annexation here. The final plat will create 39 single-family residential lots. They're located immediately east of Alice Street and north of Mountain View Park, and adjacent to Craftsman Village Phase 4, which was platted in 2018. Preliminary plat approval was on May 7th, 2012, had 19 conditions, with all of them being satisfied for this phase. Parkland for this phase is provided with a combination of open space. The two small parcels will be managed by the HOA for a signage park and a small pocket park for mailboxes. And then also from the existing bank from Mountain View Park, which is a dedicated city park. Project has received interim acceptance on the underground utilities. Surface improvements are financially guaranteed to facilitate the final platting. Curb and gutter is currently installed, as you seen from the pictures. Gravel base course is being installed, and asphalt paving is imminent in advance of home construction. The plat creates residential lots to provide much needed workforce housing in the Helena market. Mountain View Meadows is the primary supplier of owner occupied homes within the city of Helena. Each Craftsman Village home contributes approximately $3,500 to $4,000 in yearly property taxes. And with that, on behalf of Mountain View Meadows, we'd request approval of the final plat. Mountain View Meadows has received a great amount of interest, and the final plat will allow immediate home construction. I'm also available to answer any questions, and Mark Runkle with Mountain View Meadows is also in attendance.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the commission? Public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
move to approve the final plat for the Craftsman Village Phase 6 major subdivision, creating 41 lots and street right-of-way from approximately 11.42 acres, and to accept the dedication to the city of the property and public improvements so designated thereon. The property legally described as an approximately 11.42 acre portion of tract A1, 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 A1A, as shown on certificate of survey number 3368415 in the records of the clerk and recorder of Lewis and Clark County, Montana.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Echo, consider a dedication of 60-foot wide Vandelay Avenue right-of-way and the 70-foot wide Oak Street right-of-way to allow for constructions of sidewalks and on-street parking within public right-of-way for property generally located south of Prospect Avenue, north of 11th Avenue, and east of North Sanders Street in the city of Helena, Montana. Manager Hollishaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This property and this dedication of Vandelay Avenue right-of-way is part of the mall redevelopment right in the heart of Helena here, and represents a larger effort that the city's been under for quite some time. Both the right-of-ways are being vacated and discontinued with the adoption of Resolution 1279 They were, excuse me, vacated with the resolution of, with resolution 1279 on December 16th in 1912. So the former mall that stood on site was demolished in recent years, and the property is currently being redeveloped. I know that Director Haugen is here, as well as planner Ellie Ray, to provide a presentation this evening, and I do believe we also have members of the development team here as well, but to offer up questions and responses. But this is to consider the dedication and allow for construction of sidewalks, on-street parking. Thank you.
Thank you. City Planner Ray, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, and thank you, City Manager Harleshuk, for the introduction to his presentation. So as was mentioned, tonight you're being asked to just consider the dedication of two rights-of-way, the eastern portion of Vandelay Avenue, that would be east of Sanders Street, and Oak Street that runs between 11th and Prospect. And the background for this application is that we received this summer an amended plat application from Marcus Bonda of D&M Development LLC. And as was previously mentioned, they are looking to reestablish Oaks and also establish Vandelay Avenue from what was formerly a vacated alley that, as was mentioned, was discontinued, vacated nearly 110 years ago. So with this amended plat application, the applicants are looking to relocate boundary lines, aggregate some lots, do retracing work, and dedicate these streets as local streets. The amended plat does show that Oak Street would be dedicated as a 70-foot right-of-way, and the applicant has been requesting that Vandelay Avenue be dedicated at 50 feet. Now, the city has adopted engineering and design standards, complete street standards, public right-of-way accessibility guidelines, as well as fire codes. Each of these requires that local streets have a minimum width of 60 feet. So as you can see, Oak Street does comply and is consistent with these adopted codes and standards. However, Vandelay at 50 feet, as proposed by the applicant, does not meet these standards and would therefore fail to provide all the necessary components of a local street. So just to refresh your memory, if you're unfamiliar or haven't seen it in a while, I wanted to provide you with a transect of what a local street actually looks like with all of its individual components that actually create the 60 feet right of way. So some of the information that's on this slide actually are pulled directly from the city's engineering standards, and it says in part in places that each right-of-way has to have a minimum of sidewalk on each side for a bike and pedestrian path. All streets have to accommodate complete streets policy and be consistent with the Greater Helena Transportation Plan. It does also note, though, that there are instances where deviations could be permitted with sufficient justification. And you can see here some of the text says that showings could be made that the street involved is a local side street with no fronting buildings, which would not be the case in the present instance where all the proposed developments face onto Vandelay. Showing that a deviation is warranted by applicable zoning, or showing that adjoining uses would provide sufficient off-street parking. So there are some things to consider with this, some advantages and some disadvantages of these rights-of-way dedication. The chief advantage is being the fact that in rededicating Oaks and dedicating Vandelay, there's going to be much more transportation connectivity throughout not just this commercial district, but also between the district and the other residential districts that abut it to the north and south. Additionally, the dedication of the right-of-way will allow for redevelopment of vacant properties that are currently owned by Marcus Bonda. And this would encourage economic vitality within the city in conformance with our adopted growth policy, and also with alignment with the goals of the Capitol Hill Mall Urban Renewal District Plan. There are some disadvantages which have already been touched on, and that is with respect to the Vandelay Avenue right-of-way. The 50-foot width doesn't meet with our city engineering and design standards, and it doesn't satisfy complete streets or PROAG standards. Additionally, failure to meet those standards may have consequences for the provision of emergency services and raise other concerns about the potential liability for the city long term. Additionally, the city's Transportation Systems Department, Public Works Department, and the Fire Marshal have all recommended that the right-of-way be dedicated at 60 feet as the minimum and include all the required components of the local street in the interest of public health and safety. So as far as some of the safety concerns that were raised by the department, they do include, and this is not a the entire list. This is some of the more pressing issues. As I saw them, there are obstructions for emergency response. The streets are simply too narrow for fire department to effectively operate in the area in response to an emergency. There are turning radii issues that impede access and block the streets to oncoming traffic. The site plan, which was included in the application and provided to you as part of the packet for this evening, does show perpendicular parking, some of which is shown as being part of the right-of-way, some of which is shown as being part of the actual privately owned parcels. So there are long-term concerns over access and ownership and maintenance. Also, with a 50-foot right-of-way, you cannot accommodate a parallel parking lane. Oh, apologize, didn't actually intend to show that video unless needed. That was the video taken by Fire Marshal Lou Antonik, just highlighting some of the issues with access for fire engines to this site. So with all of those considerations in mind, we'd like to move to recommend the acceptance of dedication of a 60-foot wide Vandelay Avenue right-of-way and the 70-foot wide Oak Street right-of-way to allow for construction of sidewalks and on-street parking within the public right-of-way for property generally located south of Prospect Avenue, north of 11th Avenue, and east of North Sanders Street in the city of Helena, Montana. And I'm happy to take questions you may have of me. I also would like to defer any questions pertaining to the engineering standards and fire code to the relevant directors. I believe Director Kanofsky on the Zoom meeting tonight, as well as Fire Chief Ken Wood.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, Mayor, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So Ellie, I'm looking at page 190 of our packet, which gives a diagram of, is this from the engineer? So I'm not sure where this document came from, but it's showing Sanders Street as I believe it was designed. And just so I get a sense of the comparison, do you know what the width is of Sanders Street, the right-of-way that we approved?
Mayor and Commissioners, I actually would have to look that up, but I believe it's 60 feet off the top of my head, but I would defer to Director Kanofsky as I was not a party to that dedication project.
Director Kanofsky, are you available?
Mayor and Commissioners, I am looking that up as we speak. If you could give me a moment.
Mayor, if I may, I believe that that is on page 192 and it's 70 feet.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, except for I also looked at that too, and that's different than the design. So I understand that there's a 70-foot right-of-way, but what it looks like the design of the street is narrower.
Director Kanofsky, can you answer?
The design is narrower. I'm going off the top of my head because I don't have the plans in front of me, but I believe they're either a 10-foot or 11-foot lanes with a median in between there to when the original request was, the medians were there for traffic calming. So we do have boulevard and sidewalks there on that 70-foot right of way. But as stated earlier by Ms. Ray, that there are some issues with those medians as well, because for fire department operations that I can let the fire department explain more accurately. I hope that answered your question.
Commissioner O'Laughlin, do you have any more?
I do, and maybe this is just, I know we'll take public comment, and so perhaps maybe the applicant can help with this too, but Ms. Ray mentioned the perpendicular parking. And I'm just wondering, is that design included in our packet? I might have missed it, but I was just trying to get a sense of where the parking was going to be located.
Mayor and Commissioners, yes, that information was provided in your packet. I apologize that I don't actually know what page it falls under for your packet for this evening, but it was included as part of the packet so that you could see it within the context of the whole application. And the parking, some of it on, and let me see if I can pull up a copy of it actually for you. That might be easier.
I believe it's page 190 as well.
Thank you. Give me a moment. I will scan through the materials provided to you so you can all see it on the screen. Thank you for your patience. I found the page, just trying to get it up on the screen for you now so you can see it for context sake. Okay. Can everybody see the site plan now? Or the relevant portion?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So as you can see, just to the south and north on the sort of western portion of Mandalay that's being considered for dedication this evening, there are some areas and they show up within the confines again of the actual buildable parcels as being perpendicular parking spaces. Our understanding from the applicant is that these spaces are being sought to actually help meet the parking requirements overall for the proposed developments. Speaking of building A, which is the southwest structure on this screen, and then Benefice, which would be the southeast building on the screen. So you can see that between them, they also have a large slate of parking that I think the intention, I would defer to Marcus Bond on this point, but I believe that there would be a cross parking agreement probably to have the different uses share some of these parking spaces. The parking spaces that are on Oak Street that are perpendicular are shown as being within the right of way. And there are some additional spaces too that are on the south side of Mandalay, just north of the Benefice building, Benefice parcel, I should say, that would be perpendicular, but within the parcels and not within the right of way. I don't know if that helps to answer your question at all, Commissioner O'Loughlin.
No, that is very helpful. Thank you. I wasn't looking at that the right way, so that's super helpful. And then just real quick, Ms. Ray, so have we already dedicated the right of way? So the other portion on the other side of Sanders of Vandalay? I'm trying to remember now.
Mayor and Commissioners, yes, that was done in early 2020.
And what was the width of that?
The width of that, as I recall, was 50 feet.
Okay, so that one is 50 feet.
Yes, that is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Is that standard, Ms. Ray?
Mr. Mayor, no, that is not standard as far as the local street standard is concerned. And as a consequence, it doesn't provide all of the components that are required of a local street. And it has produced some issues with respect to access and response, emergency response.
Okay, and on Oak Street, is that what I'm looking at here from the diagram, is that a two-way street?
Mayor and Commissioners, yes, it would have the sufficient width to accommodate, yes, north and south traffic.
And what's the width?
It's proposed that would be 70 feet for the right of way, Mr. Mayor.
70 feet. And is that standard?
Mayor and Commissioners, that actually exceeds the 60-foot required of a local street per the city's engineering standards, complete streets, PROAG.
Okay. And I don't know if I'm looking at it right, but one side looks a little smaller than the other. Is that accurate? The one that faces the parking.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I don't understand the question.
I'm saying that I don't know if you said it's the two-way street there, and I'm just trying to find because when I'm looking at it, the street that is next to the parking seems much smaller. Am I correct or wrong, whichever?
Mayor and Commissioners, I would actually have to defer to the applicant as far as ultimately what the width of that street will be for the actual driving lane. I don't know what the width is, but in theory, and this is just a site plan, but in theory, it should accommodate both travel lanes. My understanding, and it might be the case that Director Knopke has something further to add to that.
Mayor and Commissioners, I think the perception of that roadway is that what would be the southbound lane is basically the through, or they're both through, but on the Jorgensen's hotel side, that is actually proposed parallel parking lane. That's why it appears wider than the two lanes there. I think that's your question, Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I believe Commissioner O'Loughlin alluded to this, but I want to be a little more specific. When the developer makes comment, I'd be interested to know the rationale behind that 50-foot deviation. Thank you.
Commissioner Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is along the same lines, but I guess that's not clear to me. What part of the complete street is a developer considering leaving out with having that 50-foot instead of the full 60 feet?
Mayor and Commission, I can speak to some of that, and I would certainly welcome Marcus Bonda's response as well, or Greg Worth, who's the engineer that has worked on this proposal as well. As you can maybe glean from what's shown here in the site plan, part of what's being deviated from, and not just the fact that they're not looking to provide parallel on-street parking, instead they've got the perpendicular shown, but you maybe can tell that there are some areas where there are sidewalks shown, but the sidewalks are actually within the parcels themselves and not within the right of way. So those are two big items right there. And there are some additional, I think, deviations from the standards as well that I have to look back at the transect myself to recall.
Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, for Ms. Ray or Mr. Knopke, will there be any parallel parking on Vandalay as proposed in this 50-foot right-of-way proposed plan?
Mayor and Commission, that's not what was proposed by the developer in this instance. They are only proposing the couple bays of perpendicular parking spaces that you see in the site plan.
So for those portions of Vandalay that don't have the perpendicular parking and don't have a drive approach, it looks like there's some. Would those just be proposed to be essentially yellow curved, meaning no cars may park here?
Mayor and Commission, I'll defer to Director Knapke and Chief Wood to that point, but my understanding is that in some cases, they wouldn't necessarily even just be painted yellow, but possibly red for emergency response. But I will again defer to the subject matter experts on that point.
And who may that be?
I would talk to Director Knapke, defer to him, or to Chief Wood.
You know, I would be honest here. This thing is as clear as mud. I am totally lost. I don't understand what's going on here. And I don't know. I would talk to Mr. Jordan to see how best we can come back to this issue, because there's way too much unknown. I don't understand it. Maybe I have to go look at the scene. Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, a couple more follow-ups on those questions, Mr. Mayor. So
Go ahead, Commissioner.
currently on the 50-foot vandalay that was accepted previously, is there parallel parking on either or both sides of vandalay on that portion?
Nope.
Mayor and Commission, there are no parallel parking spaces whatsoever on that already dedicated portion of Vandalay.
Do we know what the drivable width of that portion of Vandalay with no parking and the drivable portion of Vandalay here on this proposed amended plat would be, again, accepting the perpendicular spaces since they don't appear to extend out onto the proposed drivable space?
Mayor and Commission, I will defer to Director Knapke on that point.
Mayor and Commission, the Vandalay West is a 20-foot pavement section, and what I believe on their 50-foot right-of-way proposal is that's all they're proposing for the extension of Vandalay is 20 feet drivable surface.
And that would be 20 feet drivable surface with no available parallel parking spaces. So in theory, as long as someone's not illegally parking, it would always be a 20-foot drivable surface.
And Commissioners, that's correct.
And then I know it's in the packet, I apologize, but maybe Chief Wood can clarify. I think there was a comment from the fire department regarding a 20-foot driving space. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mayor, Commission, yes, that is correct. The fire department needs a 20-foot clear path for emergency vehicles to respond to an incident.
May I ask a clarifying question, Mayor?
Please.
Chief Wood, I believe Commissioner Halliday pointed out that it would be 20 feet. With that 20 feet, would there be any, what would happen in the event there was someone illegally parked? Is there an opportunity for blocking, or what would be the impact of that 20 feet first? And then second, I think Commissioner O'Loughlin pointed out the Sanders, and I know you had used one of your trucks to come up Sanders. Can you describe the distance on that street? I know that Transportation Director Knapke is researching the width of Sanders so that we can get some spatial detail. But I wanted to make sure I understood how wide is it between the medians compared to the middle where both Vandalay comes across Sanders, and then at the curbs where they're exiting onto 11th or exiting onto or entering onto Prospect. Thank you.
Yes. So Mayor, Commission, City Manager, thank you for asking the question, because that is very important point. Is that 20 feet, in order to achieve that, we look for and I would ask the Fire Marshal Lou Antoniuk to step in if I misspeak here, but 36 foot back to curb, And as you know, in Montana, we have snow, you have illegal parking, and all those things we have to take into account when responding. People illegal park all the time. There is snow that has to be removed, and all these things add up, and at best slow our response. And there's a video that Ellie actually popped up there for a second that shows the difficulty in entering Sanders and these streets. Yeah, there it is. If you have traffic, and we were out there the other day talking with the developers, we watch the traffic coming in and out of there. And if there is one vehicle parked there waiting to get out into traffic, it's virtually impossible for us to get an engine in. And we respond quite routinely with engines, not just for fire calls, but for other emergencies, motor vehicle accidents, even medical calls, because it allows us to respond to more than 2 medical calls at a time. So that's a very important part of our response model, is to be able to respond. And these streets, as they are right now, severely hinder even a rescue or ambulance from getting into these streets and into the parking lot, for example, at Starbucks. It is a real concern for the fire department and our response.
Do you, just a clarifier, do you have the widths at the entrance there? I see the truck coming in off Prospect. Do you have the entrance widths, or just the fire marshal for that, as well as the area between the medians on either side?
I do not. I would have to defer to Director Konopke. Possibly might have those, or Ellie, but I don't have the measurements right there at that opening.
Okay. Chief Wood or Director Konopke or whomever. After that, I know your hand's been up for a bit now, Commissioner Dane, you will hit the floor. Does that street meet engineering standards? Any member of the team can answer the question.
As I understand it, no, it does not. Director Konopke would be the individual, but it was signed off on, as I understand it.
Mayor and Commissioners, it does not meet engineering standards. It was allowed to come in at the reduced 50-foot a year and a half ago, I believe, when or a year ago when the plans were submitted. The reason being that it was going to be a short section of roadway that would only be this 50-foot right of way, because at that time the proposed development there on the east side was going to be more of a, I guess, a private development where the right of way wouldn't go through there. So that was done some time ago under previous city manager.
The event, are you saying, I'm sorry, can I ask a mayor?
No, we'll go to Commissioner Dean first.
Okay,
She's been
thank
up
you.
for a bit. Commissioner Dean?
If it's helpful to wait, I can wait, but my question was just in term, and this would be for probably Director Konopke to, or the city manager, mine was back to the sidewalks on Vandalay. So if the sidewalks are not in the city right of way, are they required to meet our city ordinance standards in terms of, not just snow removal, but ADA and slip, trip, and fall and the rest if it's not within the right of way?
Mayor and Commissioner, so sidewalks on private property fall under a different title under the ADA. So they are technically not, if we were to receive a complaint that they weren't shoveling their sidewalks, roadway code enforcement would try to contact the property owner and, and request, but there's nothing that we could do that binds them to the right-of-way rules that the city has established.
Damn.
Thank you.
Commissioner Halliday?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Kanofsky, just looking at the local road transect, I'm seeing a 30-foot paved section is normally proposed with, it appears a six-foot parking lane on each side and 2 9-foot travel lanes in the middle. And I'm just trying to reconcile that engineering standard with the 20-foot minimum that we are being told we have to have for a fire truck to drive through, right? Because we have to assume that there's going to be a car parked on each side and that we have 18 feet of space in the middle. So do we have a problem with our current local road engineering standard according to what we're being told this evening?
Mayor and Commissioners, as far as the history of how we got to the 9-foot, I would have to defer to Director Leland, as he was more a part of those conversations before my time at the city. But as in your reference, yes, we have a conflict where our standard says not 2 9-foot lanes, which equals the 18 feet, which does not equal the 20 feet that is required by fire code. But we are currently revising those standards to reflect the 20 feet.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, because we're being asked to accept a right-of-way dedication of 60 feet tonight so that the applicant can build exactly what we see as this local road, or at least that's the transect we've been shown. But we're also being told that that transect doesn't meet our current needs as a fire department, right?
Mayor and Commissioners, we proposed a modified section to the local roads until the engineering standards can be revised, which would be a 32-foot asphalt section, which would give us the 2 6-foot parking lanes and the 20 feet, the 2 10-foot travel lanes to meet fire code.
So maybe a process. So does it then have to be a 62-foot right-of-way dedication, or are we losing 2 feet someplace else on our complete street?
Mayor and Commissioners, there's reserved a foot on the outside of the right-of-way on each side, but we also have the ability to, that's where we took the distance from, but there's also, the ability to squeeze out some more feet in the boulevard area.
So maybe a process question on all of this, because I don't blame the mayor for being relatively confused. The applicant has submitted an amended plat, which I understand would be this Vandelay extension, because I remember Vandelay not existing on this eastern portion previously, and has proposed for this plat a 50-foot right-of-way dedication. And we're being asked tonight to accept this amended plat with a 50-foot right-of-way designation, or a 60-foot right-of-way designation. But what plat are we accepting then? Because they've done all these pretty pictures and engineering stuff designed for a 50-foot. So what is the plat we're accepting at 60, or are we just essentially drawing it for them if we accept it at a 60 tonight?
Mayor, if I may. The recommendation from staff is different from what is being proposed by the engineer. It shares in the recommended motion. The motion moves to accept the dedication at 60 feet at Vandelay and 70 at Oaks. Those are 2 widths this design has consistently been requested at. The design itself now is being proposed and shown here by the engineer, and in the application itself and dedication process, not meeting those expectations or those standards.
I appreciate that. I can sense that there's a clear divide between the staff and the applicant here. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is the applicant owns this land and is standing before us as someone saying, I want to dedicate a certain amount of land to your city. And what I want to dedicate is a 50-foot right of way. And what we're countering with is, no, we're accepting your 60-foot designation. And I guess I don't understand them to be offering that this evening. And so I'm asking, as a matter of process, how we can accept a 10-foot wider right of way that they're not willing to give, right? Like if we said we want 10 more feet, they can say, then we're withdrawing our amended plat and we'll go back to design Vandelay as a private street, right? You guys get no sidewalks, no parking, no snow removal, because we're going to do it as a private drive, and you get nothing as a city. You'll get the garbage that people provide as private streets, because we couldn't have a discussion about streets. So I'm just trying to figure out, can we actually, and this is maybe a question for Sharon or the city attorney, can we actually accept a 60-foot dedication tonight, which isn't being proposed to us by the applicant?
Mayor, if I may, commissioners, that is exactly the conversation we had with the developer, and in that the request is that they deviate from the engineering standards, which when they brought in their amended plat request, we have stuck to. I understand that it is private property, and absolutely they can call them private roads and expect no snow removal. Ultimately, the plan, when it was proposed, as far as the development, was totally in a different light. As I understand, the potential for ambulance, because it's a potential surgery center, is a different outcome, and the conversation is different even from what was originally described as being potential uses on the property. So all of those do come into consideration. So your point is absolutely spot on, in that the city does not have an obligation to take the right of way, and it does not have an obligation to provide services into those areas.
Okay, I see.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor.
I see Mr. Worth hand is up. Let's hear from him, Commissioner.
It's not clear what we're being asked to do is legal, and I just want to hear the city attorney tell us it is.
Okay, Ms. Alshaw, what do you have to say?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And the City Attorney Joden, absolutely. The expectation on any plat, and I believe anyone who is dedicating property over, if the city is going to be providing service, the expectation is that it meet the needs of the community to provide that service. So I can't say as to its specifics as to it being legal. As I understand it, the engineering standards are accepted as part of the city code in the adoption and citation. So I would, though, defer to City Attorney Joden as to whether or not we can, when on dedication with expectation of future service, ask.
City Attorney Jordan.
Mayor, commissioners, yeah, I don't have any concerns with the city asking for 60 feet of right of way. I'd also point out that there are new lots being created out of the multiple lots there. And city code does say new lots being created have to be accessed by a city standard street. Private drives are usually internal to the lots. So I guess if the applicant is going to withdraw his application and seek to do a private drive to access those lots, we're going to have to analyze that under that part of the amended plat as well, which may or may not come before the commission.
Okay, Commissioner Halliday.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I get that we can ask for 60, right? Because 60 is our standard. Normally someone would come into us and we'd say, we want a 60. What I'm trying to understand is the motion in front of us tonight, the recommendation from staff is to accept a 60-foot dedication, right? Not to reject the applicant's amended plat proposal of 50, which would make sense to me, because from everything I'm understanding from staff is recommending don't accept this. I'm just trying to tease out whether we can accept their plat, which is 50 feet, but at 60 and just say, thanks for the extra 10 feet and it's a done deal. Does that make sense? I just don't understand procedurally how this works.
Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioner Halliday, maybe I would agree. Let's see what the applicant has to say about the city's proposed, or at least staff's proposed motion. Maybe it's a distinction without a difference at this point.
Okay,
Of course, the commission can still make its own motion and choose to reject the acceptance, and we would restart this and bring it back.
let's hear from the applicant. Madam Clerk, would you raise the applicant, please? Go ahead, Mr. Worth.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners again. Greg Worth on behalf of D&M Development with Staley Engineering at 3530 Centennial Drive. And again, I'd like to thank Ms. Ellie Ray for preparing the information. Just some background to answer some of the questions that have been brought up. Sanders Street was dedicated last year, 70 feet wide. Oak Street is also proposed to be dedicated as 70 feet wide. And the reason for 70 feet is because Sanders Street and Oak Street immediately north and south of this project have all been platted at 70 feet wide. So all the north-south streets are platted at 70 feet wide. So it's for consistency. That's the reasoning behind the 70-foot width. That is wider than what is needed for a local street. But for consistency, it doesn't make logical sense to have one block that's 10 foot narrower than the others. So that's the reasoning behind the 70-foot street. All streets are proposed to have 10-foot drive lanes. Oak Street has parallel parking along Jorgensen's. Vandelay is proposed to have two 10-foot travel lanes. Sanders Street is designed with two 10-foot travel lanes, with also with the curb bulb outs and the medians. Sanders Street and Vandelay to the west were dedicated last year in year 2020. Vandelay is proposed at 50 foot wide to avoid excess right-of-way and allow larger lot development areas. Larger lot areas allow for zoning and parking compliance, while facilitating maximal taxable advantages. In response to the city comments, we will revise the right-of-way dedication to widen the right-of-way where the perpendicular parking is shown. And that will roughly include about the additional 15 feet on each side. So we'll have an irregular shaped right-of-way. Is what we're proposing. The engineering standards do allow deviations from the complete street component matrix. That's what we're requesting. Engineering standards recommends new development consider traffic calming measures for new developments and must be used for all local and collector streets. Engineering standards provided numerous recommendations for traffic calming. The ones that we are including here for proposal the main was a shared parking zone to include the perpendicular parking, narrow streets, boulevards, street trees, curb bulb outs, and horizontal deflection. Also, some of the basis on what's being proposed is reviewing the growth policy and the Capitol Hill Mall urban renewal plan. Both those plans were publicly vetted and approved by the commission. To cite some excerpts from the growth policy, the site is recommended as a neighborhood center to optimize reinvestment. The key element is a sense of place by enabling intense mixed development and encouraging concentration of activity in identity-rich districts. Centers will provide a denser development pattern to achieve a unified, functional, efficient, and aesthetically appealing physical setting, providing opportunities for easy connections, public transportation, and walkability. Transportation systems to minimize the amount of available land used for travel and parking purposes. Transportation objectives to support compact land use patterns, highlight and support neighborhood centers. Provide transportation corridors that emphasize neighborhood centers as points of community importance and focus. Further, reviewing the Capitol Hill Mall Urban Renewal Plan was approved last year. Streetscape improvements was the most frequent comment. Streetscape included reducing right-of-ways, adding parking strips, sidewalks, bulb outs, green boulevards, trees. The goal to facilitate private sector development and use URD funds for the extension of Vandalay through the site. Work with the developer of the former mall site to achieve objectives in the growth policy for a neighborhood center. Promote higher densities and compact land use patterns to allow mixed development and aesthetically appealing physical setting. Allow taller mixed development to increase residential and commercial opportunities while using services and infrastructure more efficiently. Additionally, the city is considering creation of an overlay zoning district with heightened development standards resulting from the growth policy and URD plan for streetscape improvements, connectivity, promote denser infill and redevelopment opportunities. The traffic calming measures are consistent with the approved plans to create a neighborhood center and establish a sense of place and encourage gathering. The desire for the neighborhood center, according to the plans, being a non-standard development design concept, is for a great northern town center type neighborhood center. Utilizing city standard streets, less allowances are allowed. The neighborhood center will be a Custer Avenue standard retail type center. I want to point out there is no intent to circumvent any regulations or compromise on public safety or emergency vehicle access. The design is to accommodate emergency vehicle access, which is a very low likelihood occurrence, and not diminish everyday use. Design accommodates frequent service and delivery vehicles. Large unused streets will severely compromise the livability and sense of place for the desired neighborhood center. Reviewing emergency access, as Commissioner Logan pointed out earlier in the evening, and Miss Rachel Harlow Shope, there is a consideration in modern building codes. The buildings will be built to modern building codes with fire rated materials and sprinkler systems. So those are considerations on provisions for emergency access. On this site specifically, the presence of Prospect Avenue and 11th Avenue are very large physical streets that dominate the setting. The desire is to avoid another large street, according to the public comment and the comments received in the growth policy and the URD plan. The reduction in physical size of Vandalay Avenue achieves the maximal taxable values in the district by maximizing the developable area and taxable areas. So what we'd request is the dedication approval of the Oak Street right-of-way at 70 feet wide, and the dedication of Vandalay Avenue at 50 feet wide, with the widening 15 feet on each side to accommodate the areas where the shared parking, the perpendicular parking is proposed. At this time, the full extent of the development is not known. Commonly referred to as the benefice site is unknown at this time. And what we propose is that we dedicate this as 50 feet wide, and we will have an amended plat in the future to provide any widened, the 15 feet on each side, to allow for the perpendicular in the future. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions, and Mr. Marcus Sponda with D&M Development is also in attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. One question from me. Is there a reason why you can't go back to the drawing board and bring it back for the dedication of 60 feet?
There is any reason why we can't. It's not preferable from the developer's perspective. The reason we're showing the perpendicular parking is for that town center type feel, to integrate the parking into the streetscape, to try and invite more parking. One consideration is the parallel parking is not very efficient, especially in a commercial area like this. An example is Sanders Street up by Lowe's. As part of the Trinity Center development, that street the on-street parking was removed because it was underutilized, and it was more efficient to use that space as a center turn lane. The desire from the development perspective is to have perpendicular shared parking in lieu of parallel parking. That's the part of the deviation request we were asking for.
Any other comments from the commission? Go ahead, Commissioner. Commissioner Halliday.
Thanks. Maybe for, and I have a couple of questions after all of that, but maybe for Mr. Kanofsky, if we accept the applicant's offer of 60 feet, which I don't understand them to be offering, but let's say we say 60 and they go with it, are we still proposing no parking on either side of Vandalay?
Mayor and Commission, if we went with a local city standard street, there would be parallel parking on both sides with the
Gotcha.
travel lanes.
So we would be telling them get rid of the perpendicular and just go with parallel parking.
Mayor and Commissioners, that's how our engineering standards are laid out as parallel parking and do not include the provisions without commission approval for angled parking.
So maybe a question from Mr. Worth then. Our recommendation tonight is that we accept the developer's dedication of 60 feet. And I've been a little confused, if you take it from my questions, about how we can accept something that we haven't been offered. Is the developer offering a 60-foot right-of-way this evening?
Mr. Worth.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioner Halliday. The developer is not offering a 60-foot right-of-way this evening.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just before I won't ask another question, but I'll just reiterate again. I don't think we can take staff's recommendation this evening if the applicant is not offering it. I think we can have those discussions about either accepting what's being offered or suggestions that you've had, Mr. Mayor, but I don't know how we could actually accept something. This is a plat, has legal effect, and I don't know how we can just say, we accept your 50-foot plat and we're just gonna like draw an extra 10-foot line down the middle of it. That doesn't make any sense to me. And given that the applicant's not offering it and I haven't heard an explanation of how we can do that, I'm just gonna say that I don't think we can take the recommended motion this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I know most of the conversation here has been about the parking, but the thing that I keep going back to that I think I'm most concerned about is the sidewalk issue. We are trying to clean up, I would say what were probably bad decisions, 50 years ago in terms of sidewalks. And I'd hate to put another commission in the same position 50 years from now and hope that folks just follow recommendations. So I'll just voice it. I'm pretty concerned about the sidewalk piece on Vandalay as proposed right now. And I hope that's something maybe the developer could take into consideration how to, amend things to alleviate those concerns. I'm sure everyone has the best of intentions, but as we know, it's, it might not be feasible for someone 50 years from now to fix a sidewalk, and we run into the same issues that we're running into right now in fixing decades old sidewalks or non-existent sidewalks.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Yeah, so I just, on the sidewalks, I guess maybe, Mr. Worth, just so I'm clear on the sidewalks, the plan is to develop sidewalks along Vandalay. I understand there's a question of whether or not they're on private property, but they are. Is the applicant proposing to develop sidewalks throughout the whole space?
Mr. Worth.
O'Loughlin, thank you, and Commissioner Dean, thank you for asking the question so I can further clarify. When I say the additional 15-foot right-of-way is proposed, that would include the sidewalks, to include all sidewalks within the right-of-way. So it would include the parking and the sidewalks, the perpendicular parking. That would be in that additional 15 feet. In the areas where the perpendicular parking does not occur, we would have a minimum, the 50-foot right-of-way, which would include the sidewalk within the right-of-way and the 2 10-foot travel lanes. So with our revised proposal, all sidewalk within Vandalay is proposed to be within right-of-way.
Okay. And then Mayor, my original question, I think probably for Mr. Worth. So it was helpful when you talked about the Great Northern Town Center, just as sort of an example of how this has looked. And I'm just wondering if you can expand upon that, the extent to which you sort of see that. What are the similarities of what you all are envisioning here, or what are the differences potentially as well, as far as the width and the parking situation? Like how similar is Great Northern compared to what the applicant is envisioning here?
Mr. Worth?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner O'Loughlin. As far as specifics, I don't have, dimensions of what the streets are in the Great Northern Town Center. I do know the Great Northern Town Center, they use angled parking similar to Park Avenue by Park Avenue Bakery and the brewery, that functions very well. Other municipalities are using the angled parking here too. We elected not to use the angled parking here just because we suspect that the difficulty with the angled parking is you're forcing a direction upon exit. And I see, based on these type of use, some of the occupants, vehicle users may want to go west or east, and trying to avoid that conflict movement, which may occur on site. The other advantage with perpendicular parking is that it's more efficient for space. If we went to angled parking, we would probably lose 2 to 3 parking spaces per parking bank just because of the angled nature rather than being perpendicular. It's just, anytime you introduce angles, you lose space efficiency. And in this case, we're trying to meet the parking codes. We're trying not to use too many parking deviations. Most, as far as the Opportunity Bank site, they know how many parking spaces they need. They know how many occupants they want in the building. So based on past experience, they know what type of parking they want. And it's about the minimum parking requirements. So we're not trying to use too many reductions on the Opportunity Bank site. The Building A site, some of those will be condos, which the parking requirement is, 1 space per dwelling unit. We just know that there's going to be instances where a dwelling unit is going to have need more than 1 parking space. So we, prefer not to, in this case, not just meet the minimums. We want to provide good design is providing a reasonable amount of parking as well too. We're not trying to maximize the parking because we want to introduce green space, and we also want to maximize building area for taxable values, but we don't want to skimp on parking either, especially in this case because we don't have on-street parking available on 11th or Prospect. So there's limited opportunities for overflow parking within the site due to, Prospect on 11th.
Thank you. At this time, I will entertain public comments.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, first up online with their hand raised, I have an individual listed as Danny G. I would ask that individual to list their full name prior to giving comment.
Mayor Collins and Commissioners, this is Danny Greeby with LPW Architects at 15 5th Street South in Great Falls. Speaking in the interest of benefice, we would like to see you vote in favor of the proposal for the 70-foot Oak Street right-of-way and the 50-foot Vandelay Avenue right-of-way. These additional stalls contribute to the square footage of the building per the city code ratios of square footage to required parking to fully utilize the site that they own in accordance with the district standards. This proposal also allows more views and accessibility to green spaces, the landscaping, and of the built environment that parallel parking and a larger right-of-way would reduce. As well, it is in Benefice's best interest to properly maintain sidewalks for their patients and guests. We ask you to reject the recommended motion and instead motion for the 50-foot right-of-way request for Vandelay Avenue and the 70-foot right-of-way for Oaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, yes. Next, I have Mark Esponda.
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Mark.
Good evening.
ESPONDA at 7 Crossfire Drive in Clancy. I would say first, I appreciate and respect the city staff and what they're tasked with in regard to development and infrastructure. I think there's a good place for uniformity and standards in many situations in the community. That said, I think this mall development is a case for some deviations from those standards. First of all, we would have half of a commercial development with one type of street and another half of a development with a different type of street. I think that we've heard overwhelmingly from members of the public and the community. We've heard from the city commission in the past about urban renewal and more density and neighborhood type areas. What we're proposing is very similar to what's in the Great Northern, except for it has boulevards instead of the sidewalk right against the building. It would have boulevards and sidewalks. I think what the city staff is recommending is a residential street in the middle of a commercial development. When you look at what we're proposing a 20-foot unobstructed drive lane with no parking on either side. What the city is proposing is 18 feet with cars parked parallel on each side of the street. And I guess, I don't know if this is a statement or a question, but I don't understand how a 20-foot unobstructed drive aisle with, is better than a 18-foot drive aisle with cars parked on both sides of it. I guess it just doesn't make sense to me that the city would recommend something that doesn't meet their city standard for emergency vehicles. Like Mr. Canopy said earlier, 18 feet does not meet their standard for what they're trying to accomplish, and our 20 feet does.
Are you done, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no other hands raised. I have no written public comment online, and there is no one in chambers to make public comment on this item.
Commissioner Dean.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question. So I know that and I don't know if staff has this offhand right now, but the Great Northern's been noted many times tonight. And I'm wondering if we know what the distance of the right of way within the Great Northern is. And I guess I would also be curious. I work down there, and so I am walking around it all the time. And I know lots of people park illegally all over there where they're not supposed to be parking, where there isn't on-street parking, like in front of the UPS boxes and the rest. But I'm just trying to get a frame of reference as to, what this actually looks like. And so I'm wondering if anyone knows what the right-of-way distance is within the Great Northern.
I don't.
Mayor and Commissioners, it varies. On 14th, the right of way is about 31 feet, but that right of way width is only the roadway. The parking is behind the right of way and totally off right of way, as is the sidewalks in most areas. The roadway that goes down to the movie theater right of way width is about 24.5 feet. But again, that's just drivable lanes. The parking and sidewalks are behind that right of way width.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kanopke. Now, there is much to discuss about this topic. And I want to propose, we table this. And when we have the information or the adjustments, we can get back to it. What saith you, Commission?
So I do have one question on that, Mr. Mayor, which is, and maybe it's for the manager, but does there need to be any direction given one way or the other about, even if we're going to table it, the commission's appetite between 50 and 60 feet? Because judging by the respective positions that were presented by the applicant this evening and the city staff, it's sort of hard to bridge that gap right now. And I heard a little bit from the applicant indicating a willingness to dedicate the 15 feet that would be needed in order to ensure the sidewalks near the perpendicular parking would be public, right, to accommodate some commission questions. But I've heard some pretty strong opinions from our staff, and I just can't tell if we're sending these two groups back into a room to butt heads, because we can't come up with a call.
Do we have any other comments from the commission on my proposal?
Mr. Mayor. I think I'd be in favor of tabling. One thing, I know if they're gonna go back and, recommend or redo this to include that 15 feet, I think that's fine. I guess now I'm, I'm concerned that the sidewalks and boulevards aren't in the right of way of the Great Northern. But my other thing too is, now that I understand that the Great Northern right of way is larger than the street piece that they're proposing here. Would that be, Director Knopke, is that accurate? Since they're proposing 20 and the shortest distance you noted was 24 and a half.
So the travel lanes, yes, are wider than what they're proposing. But the right-of-way width, for whatever reason, is a little different than in the Great Northern, because it doesn't include those other amenities like sidewalks and parking. So the right-of-way width is narrower, but the drivable surface is wider. Sorry to make that more complicated.
No, that it's super helpful, because
Okay,
I guess that's just, I think that it's, I don't think they're comparable then.
I think we should focus on this issue right now, because time is far spent and we still have our agenda to move forward on. So I know that the team suggested a 60-foot, and the applicant is saying no. So I think we should vote on whether we accept this 60-foot or not, because if they're saying that they don't accept it, let's just vote on it, yay, nay, and move forward with whatever else we have to do instead of just beating this horse. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion. No motion. Dang. Okay. I'm not sure what to do from here then.
Mayor, if I could, I would recommend that the commission consider a motion to table, since the applicant has, as I understood it, proposed something somewhat new. We could run that back through the normal process, give staff a chance to review that, and bring that specific proposal back to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. That's why I suggested in the initial stage, but I didn't hear any. Anyway, we'll go back. I'll entertain a motion to table this discussion for a future agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I will move to table item 11E for a future agenda.
Any second?
Second.
What's that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
Motion to table carries 5-0.
Okay. 12 alpha, consider a resolution providing for the annual tax levy emails for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and ending July 30th, 2022. Manager Hollishaw.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is the public hearing on the consideration of the resolution for the annual tax levy and mills for the fiscal year. And I have both the finance team director, Sheila Danielson, as well as budget officer, Christopher Cooey, who are available for presentation. Also want to note that Mr. Cooey has taken a recent promotion, and this will probably be his last time in providing this update to you all, as he will be moving up in our organization and working as a deputy director for our transportation team. So, Director Danielson.
Thank you, City Manager Harleshak, Mayor and Commission, for this agenda item. I'm going to pass this on to Budget Officer Christopher Cooey.
Mr. Cooey.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's been a while. I will try to move through this as quickly as I can. So, but stop me at any point if you need some more information. So. Tonight, we're talking about the mill levy, similar presentation to what I gave you guys last year. I hope that it seems familiar. So tonight, the requirement of MCA 7-6-4036, we have to set the tax levy by a certain date or within 30 calendar days of receiving our certified taxable values. We received them dated August 3rd, which would make September 2nd the 30-day mark. The later of those being September 9th. So it just seemed to coincide pretty well with today's date. Our maximum allowable general levy for tax year 21, fiscal year 22 is $9,399,093. That equates to a general levy in mills of 121.13. Total mills citywide 168.87. So that would include the fire levy, the health insurance levy, the general obligation bond levy. And your recommended motion when we're done here would be move to approve a resolution providing for the annual tax levy in mills for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, ending June 30, 2022. So our general levy breakdown 121.13. It would include the railroad TIF, the downtown TIF, and the newly created Capitol Mall TIF district. Those amounts are contained within the 121.13. Last year's general levy was 124.28, so we're going down. The group health levy 28.66, the geo debt levy 7.1, and the fire department supplemental 11.98 for a total of, my closed captions get in my way, but I think it's 5.93, a reduction versus last year. And so why are we going down in mills? Again, I'll move through this as quickly as I can. So the two factors that affect our mill levy calculation are the amount of taxable value in the levying district and the maximum allowable amount to be levied, which is determined from the Department of Revenue by taking the prior year amount and adjusting for inflation. The general idea here is that if our taxable value is growing faster than inflation, then we need less mills to generate the same amount of revenue as the prior year plus our inflation. So the example below, again, if we were allowed $500 last year on a $5,000 base, we would need 100 mills, $100 per $1,000 of taxable value. If we take an inflationary rate of 2%, our inflation factor of 1%, which by law is 1/2 of the inflation rate, Our allowable amount would be $505 this next year, which is the 500 from prior year plus our inflation. Now, if our taxable value had grown to 7,500 in that time, you can see it would only need 67.33 mils to generate that $505. So that is our relationship between taxable value and inflation and the effect on mills. Next here is sort of the breakdown, and you'll find these numbers on the levy calculation sheet that was in your packet with the agenda. 9,111,045 was the prior year allowable amount, an inflationary factor of 0.93%, which is set by the Department of Revenue. That's that 3-year 1/2 average. Total taxable value for $78,423,416. They adjust that to exclude new growth and the tax or the TIF increment amounts. So that gets us to $75,913,865. So that translates to a taxable value per mil, $75,913 and roughly 87 cents. Our current year allowable amount before the new growth and the TIF districts, the 9,195,778, which gives us our mill calculation. You take that number divided by the value per mil equals 121.13 mils. And then that number is then applied to the new growth in the TIF taxable value increments to get to that 9,399,093 that we saw in the beginning. This is the breakdown of all mill levies for both the city and the county. The ones highlighted in blue here are the ones that are relevant to city properties. So you have our main one, 161.77, and then the GO bond levy is broken out separately. Those two would be the 168. The county mills, if you are inside city limits, is 191.69. That also went down. I believe theirs was 193 point something last year as well. And then down below here under the millage by school district, that is the school district that's relevant to city limits. You can see the schools are charging 430.24 for a total of 790.8. That's what you will be paying in number of mills if you live in city limits altogether. And if you remember last year, it was, I believe, 818.43. So we've gone down considerably from last year. And again, that's that relationship between taxable value and the inflation rate. Here is a sort of a quick example of a $300,000 market value home, which I think hopefully we can all agree is somewhere in the range of what's out there right now. The total tax on that would be $3,202. And you get those by going through and taking your market value by the taxable rate, which is actually set by statute at 1.35%, gives you a taxable value of just over $4,000. You take your mill equivalent, which is just dividing by 1,000, gives you $4.05 per mill times the 790.8 mills you'll pay as a city resident for the $3,202.74. Here's the breakdown of your market value versus how much you're paying in property tax. So just over 1% of market value is making up property tax of your property. And then when you see the split between where those taxes go, you can see the city makes up just over 21%, the county little over 23.5%, and the school districts make up over 55% of where the tax dollars go. And then this is just our 5-year history. And again, you can see in yellow, the highlighted part is our current year breakdown. Again, going into 430.24 for the schools, 168.87 for the city, 191.69 for the county, for a total of 790.8. And like I said, last year was 818.43. And so the best way to think about that number is that as a city resident, you're going to pay $790.80 for every $1,000 of your taxable value. And that's it.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commission?
Well, oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm gonna guess that Commissioner O'Loughlin was gonna say something similar to me, so go ahead. I was just gonna say you did a very good job of explaining that, and the legislature should take note. Not that we want to lose you, and congratulations on your promotion, but that was an excellent job of explaining something that confuses most people.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Loughlin?
No, I would just say, as always, thank you for the great presentation. And I would love the slides, please, so I can take a look more closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? No comments. Any public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no hands raised online. I have no written public comment and no one in chambers to make a comment on this item.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve a resolution providing for the annual tax levy and mills for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending in June 30, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final comments? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
At this time, I want to apologize to the Helena Citizens Council. I skipped them. Do we have a representative still present? Ms. Wilson, I apologize. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission. It's a pleasure to be here. I was listening intently, but I don't have an agenda in front of me, so I wasn't sure when this was going to come up. But I do have a brief report is that we approved a composting recommendation for the commission. And the new members took their oath of office. I was one of them. I think there was like 5 or 6 others. And then we learned from Jake Garson, the city public information officer, about how the city is attempting to communicate with the citizens. And they stressed the Be Heard Helena website and My Helena app as 2 avenues that they're trying to build upon. And then we also discussed the possibility of looking into affordable housing because it seems to be a really big issue now. And even more so since some people will be displaced because of the fire that happened last night. So that's the report. I wanted to keep it short and sweet since it's getting late. And thank you for letting me join in.
Thank you. And my apologies again. Okay.
It's understandable. Thank you.
Okay, consider a resolution adopting final budget authority and appropriation for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. And setting the salary for municipal court judge. Manager Halshock.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight, the Director Danielson is on, and pleased to share with you our proposed final budget based on the revisions agreed to during the preliminary budget adoption, as well as the incorporation of carryover and end of year revenues as well. And I know you've all received emails from me along the way based on the street assessment. I also want to share that I've had questions about the work plan for the team, and based on that question, we have completed a revision into, and you'll see within the budget itself, the work plan per each of your strategic outcomes, the work to be done this year by the teams. So wanted to make sure. And then again, by the end of this year, we'll be working on performance measures and over the next 3 to 7 years, really 3 to 5 years, working on fiscal stability. As you know, it's more than money. So I will turn it over to Director Danielson. If you have any questions for me after that, let me know.
Director Danielson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight we have the presentation of the proposed final budget for fiscal 22 before you. As Manager Harlow-Schock mentioned, we incorporated the amendments that were approved by the Commission on June 28th. We've had an opportunity to update the fiscal 21 estimated actuals. These are unaudited numbers, but we believe much closer to what we estimate for the fiscal year end to be. And so that did impact the beginning cash balances of most of the funds. I do want to draw your attention to the summary of changes to the preliminary budget that I included in your packet. And that goes over any changes that were made to both revenues and expenditures, and also a list of changes to the beginning cash balances to the funds that are reflective of the estimated actuals for fiscal 21 being updated. So that was in your packet, and if you have any questions about that, I can address that at the end. We also revised our cost allocation methodology to a methodology that I feel captured more updated data. The methodology that had been used for the last several years had not had the opportunity to be updated with current data, and so I had the opportunity to do that, and that resulted in an increase of revenue to the general fund of about $357,000. Those cost allocations were based on budget year 21 figures, which we will also shore up after we wrap up our final audited numbers. And if there's a variance of more than 10%, we will go back and edit that and propose a budget adjustment to our budget amendment to the commission to shore up those numbers. I don't believe that has been the case in the past. They have always proposed to allocate general fund costs based on the current year budget, and there was never a look back period. So I think that it's an appropriate methodology to look at that, revise it, and edit it if necessary. There's also we updated capital carryovers, and more specifically in the streets fund. So you'll see a rather large change in their beginning cash balance because of the carryovers that we updated in fiscal 21 for the streets fund. And we also added the staff member in the streets fund plus seasonals that were reflective of the streets fund budget amendments that were passed on June 28th. Again, Manager Harlow-Schock added that I'd like to draw your attention also to the department work plans that were summarized. They were previously just sectioned out by department, but Manager Harlow-Schock had the opportunity to go through that and consolidate that into the robust work plans that all of the department directors will be working on. And she laid those out by the strategic initiatives that the commission had laid out for budget year 22. With that, I don't believe there were any other changes from the preliminary to the final. And at this time, I am open for questions.
Thank you, Director. Mayor, if I just would summarize one last item. This budget represents a balanced budget. It's a more robust process than you've seen in a great while in Helena. It is not increasing fines, fees, or assessments at this time, and represents current reflection, including carryover, which previously was not a part of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Danielson. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, just to go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just had a comment. I'm really appreciative of the work plan update. I think that this gives the community a clear idea of what this budget actually translates to in terms of what we're doing. And I mean, I've never seen us produce anything like this before. So really grateful for that to be included. And I think I'm going to print this off and hand it off to anybody who says, you know, what's happening here, because this is just a very clear picture of, and ensures that people don't have to go hunting for numbers, and instead a narrative example of what it actually looks like. So thank you for including that.
Thank you. Commissioner Holliday.
Sure, maybe for just Ms. Danielson. So on page 5 with the cost allocation changes, can you just walk us through a couple of examples, like what's going on with facilities management at 45,434, gas tax at under 34,292? Can you just explain what that means?
Yes, so those changes were based on the methodology that I put in place based on best practices that I've used in the past with other municipalities of allocating general fund costs. For example, if you were to look at legislative activities such as yourselves and the city attorney's office, I went through and researched all of the agenda items that's been heard before the commission, and what that represented, and the category that represented. And then I allocated the legislative and city clerk and city attorney's time based on those agenda items to different funds and our divisions. Another example of allocating those changes would be the executive office and human resources and payroll, allocating those costs based on FTEs, which makes more sense to me. Again, operating expenditures for public works administration and as well as parks and recreation administration. Some of these deviated quite a bit from what had been used in the past. And so we are seeing a fairly large swing in some of those allocations, but I would foresee that those become more stable after this initial change in methodology. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Halliday?
Yeah, that's really helpful. And maybe just a quick follow-up. So for someone who's reading this, is it correct to understand that facilities management, for example, 212, that the allocation to facilities management has gone up by 45,434, while something like, let's see, recycling looks like it's gone down 12,047. Am I reading that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just maybe a couple questions for Director Danielson. So apologies if I missed this, but how are we handling the ARPA funds? Will that be a budget amendment into the future, or what's the process for reflecting that in the budget?
Thank you, Commissioner Laughlin. That's an excellent question. We have not had an opportunity to present to the commission on potential uses of those ARPA funds. So in the current budget, we have the revenue reflected for ARPA funds. However, we don't have any projections of expenditures yet because we haven't brought that to the commission's attention yet. So yes, that would be in the form of a budget amendment that would be brought forward to the commission.
Okay.
May sorry, can I ask a clarifying question? The activities are not the modifier to the budget. The addition of the second allocation would be the increase. Would that be the modification of the budget? I guess I actually don't know that we're on the same page on what results in a modification to the budget for ARPA. By the incorporation of these current revenue, we have those dollars adopted just like we would any other grant we receive in this current fiscal year. The second allocation, second tranche of ARPA dollars have not been allocated to the budget, but those activities within them we're bringing to the commission. will those activities require a budget modification? That's, I think, the question. If it results in a change in fund, is that true?
And Mayor, maybe just a question to the city manager. What's the harm of being transparent and open about reflecting those dollars in the budget?
Oh, goodness. That's a good question. None. No problem at all. No, what I'm sharing to you is that the need for the modified process. So just the question is, modifying the budget requires the double hearings. So just like we do with any other grant, there is no reduced transparency. As I've shared before, the implication is that when we adopt any of those funds, we still come back and talk through how those activities work. It's just the opportunity we have right now, like we do with any other grant.
I mean, we talk about it as a commission, but there's no public hearing, right? So if we want a full process, is there merit to actually amending the budget?
Thank you, Commissioner O'Loughlin. The amending the budget to, can ask a clarifying question. When you say amend the budget, are you talking about the 4 million or the additional operational level edits that you're describing? I'm just not sure.
Commissioner O'Loughlin?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was that we were going to discuss and amend the budget in the future. It sounds like that is going to be the process. It would just come up as a budget amendment later on.
For the addition of new dollars, absolutely. For the movement of funds between funds, absolutely.
Do we have any other questions from the commission?
Well, I'm happy to hear it from Director Danielson as well. I do have one more question, but I didn't want to jump in if you had more to say on that.
Oh, Director Danielson?
Yes, Commissioner O'Loughlin, Mayor, and other commissioners and Manager Harlow-Schock. Currently, there are no expenditures budgeted for the ARPA dollars because the decision on how to spend those dollars has not been decided yet. The expected revenues have been reflected in the budget document.
Okay, super helpful. Thank you. So the other question I had, Director Danielson, and maybe this is, so that now I'm understanding, if I'm looking at FY21 estimated actuals of our revenue, it's a bit high. Does the FY21 then reflects the ARPA dollars? Or is it reflected in 22?
22.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Loughlin. We received our first tranche of funds in fiscal 21. So the revenue in 21 reflects the amount received. And then there'll be another tranche that will be received in fiscal 22.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, we had a fair amount of discussions during the budget process about revenue minus expenditures, sort of what was estimated to be one-time expenditures versus ongoing. Do you have a sense? I mean, I'm looking at, so total revenues for FY22 is projected at 24 million, total expenditures at 28 million. So it's a $4 million difference. Do you have a sense of how much of that sort of deficit is ongoing at this point?
So I did do that calculation, and it's a little over $1 million that is ongoing based on my initial calculation. I will remind the commission though that we have not reviewed revenues at this time for incremental fees or whatnot that would cover that as well. And so that's that piece, along with trying to really dive into why the departments in the general fund and other funds are consistently over budgeting what they're actually expending. And so I plan to dive into that as well to kind of determine really, is this an ongoing issue or not? But that is something that we will be reviewing. I'll be reviewing and looking at with the department heads over the course of the next year before we accumulate data to present to the commission the fiscal 23 budget.
Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, just a question for Ms. Danielson. On the cost allocation changes to various funds, I see there's fewer funds there than, say, all of our funds like that are set out on the next page. But I was curious about, I didn't see transportation or streets fund in there. And I was curious about that one since we seem to spend a lot of time talking about that one.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Halliday. The list that I have below just includes the funds that I didn't address earlier in that document. So if you go down to page 2 of that document, it lists the street funds changes, and the internal cost allocations for the streets department went up $184,000.
Gotcha. And so do you see that number as sort of a fluctuating number, or is that a, like, year over year, we need to start looking at the streets fund as having, something in that $185,000 to $200,000 range?
I would expect them to budget in that accord. However, it depends also. Some of the allocations are based on agenda items on the commission, and as you can reflect back on the year, transportation and streets items tend to get on the agenda quite a bit more than other items, and so they do get allocated more of those, the city attorney costs, the city manager, and the legislative overhead. They do tend to get more attention, and so I would expect that allocation not to fluctuate too much unless they their agenda items don't come down. But the rest of the allocations are based on operating costs, which are fairly consistent. It does not include capital. That's not part of the formula. So, but operating costs will stabilize, and yes. So to answer your question, I would expect that to be consistent.
And then just another one in there, I noticed golf is up about 90,000. And I know, knock on wood, golf will be its own sustainable fund in a few years and won't be drawing on the general fund. But I guess I'm just curious, if golf has a $90,000 essentially owed to the general fund, how does that work? Does the general fund send 90,000 to golf, and then golf sends that 90,000 back to the general fund, or how do we account for that?
Thank you, Commissioner Halliday. That's an excellent question. And one of the questions and one of the policies that we'll be bring forward to the commission is subsidies. So, right now it's been every year there's been a determination of how much the general fund wants to subsidize other funds, such as the transit fund and the golf fund and the other funds. So that is a good question, and I think one that needs to be addressed and is a policy issue.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other commissioners? Do we have any comments from the public on this topic? Madam Clerk, would you check?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no hands raised. I've received no written public comment on this item. There is no one here in the chambers with me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will move to approve a resolution adopting final budgets, budget authorities, and appropriations for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, and setting the salary for the municipal court judge.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any final discussion? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone from the public wishes to address the commission? Madam Clerk, do we have any raised hands?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no hands raised. I have no written public comment and no one in the chamber still.
Any final comments from the commission? If not, this meeting is formally adjourned.